If your creative push has helped you, you can help the show by shopping on Amazon.com. All you have to do is head to yourcreativepush.com/Amazon. That will take you right there, and you can shop how you normally would. A small percentage of your purchases will go directly to helping cover the costs of creating, hosting, and maintaining your creative push. And especially with the holidays coming up, you can make a big difference just by buying the things you were going to anyway. Again, that's yourcreativepush.com/Amazon, and thank you for thinking of the show and for helping out. Your Creative Push, episode 268.
So don't let anybody tell you you can't do what you're dreaming to do. Always fight, always work hard, and always push forward.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngmin Brown, and my guest today is Freddy Negrete. Freddy is a legendary tattoo artist, best known for pioneering the black and gray tattoo style, a style he developed while serving time in a series of correctional facilities during a youth filled with abuse, gang life, and drug addiction. And Freddy comes on the show today to talk about just that, how he was a troubled youth and involved in gangs and incarceration, most notably his experience at Youth Authority and then at Tamarack, a place where he was really able to develop his style. But then, after he was out of incarceration, he talks about how he approached his tattooing career and working with the likes of Good Time Charlie, Jack Rudy, and Ed Hardy, and how they influenced not only his art, but also his mindset as a creative entrepreneur. And then Freddy dives deep into what it means to be a successful artist, the mindset that you have to have if you want to get better and better. And with that comes the desire to get better with every single piece you create. He talks about some of the harder times that he went through after becoming a professional tattoo artist and learning from those mistakes that he made, having a hiatus from his art, and then his renewed commitment to be teachable and all the things that he missed out on during that hiatus. Freddy really opens up and talks about how rehab changed his life and also the way in which meditation helped him to maintain focus with his art. And finally, he talks about the experience of meeting Steve Jones and writing his new book, Smile Now, Cry Later. Just a deep dive with a legend in the field. I really appreciate the way that Freddy opened up to me, to you, to all of us, so that we can push past our own obstacles, any obstacles that stand in our way from reaching our creative potential. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Freddy Negrete. Freddy, welcome to Your Creative Push.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Oh man, it's a pleasure. It's a real honor. I read your book. It's awesome. You co-wrote it with Steve Jones, and it's just a really great insight into your life. And I really suggest for anybody that wants to learn more about you and hear your awesome story to purchase it. But maybe could we start by giving a little bit of a bio, sort of how you started out in art, and then your I don't want to say crazy journey, but your extensive journey that you've kind of gone on.
Yeah, well, art-wise, I was born with, art ability. My father and my uncles were artists, and more specifically, prison artists. I grew up in foster care, and I had a troubled youth. I was a troubled youth. Mm-hmm. I ended up joining a gang in the east side of LA in San Gabriel Valley. I was really very involved with that. But I learned that Chicano, Cholo subculture, and I was always the neighborhood tattoo guy, doing little hand poke tattoos on all the homies, the Pachuco cross and lettering, things like that. But I ended up really institutionalized, It's the longest period of time that I would stay out at once was 2 months. From the age of 12 till I was 22, I was pretty much locked up all the time. But on the brighter side of that, I became a self-taught artist, I spent most of my time when I was locked up drawing, and really, the Chicano subculture, the Cholo scene and everything, we have images that are very important to us, the images that you see today in black and gray tattooing, but like religious themes, Marys and Jesus, revolutionary type stuff like Zapata and Pancho Villa, or the Chara girl with, the sombrero and the gun belt, Aztec images, crosses, roses, all those things, skulls. So I really, focused on those themes that were so important to us. So when I ended up in Youth Authority, California Youth Authority is like prison for, juveniles. I got in big trouble in there, and I got sent to a lockup program called Tamarack. And Tamarack program was for like criminally insane youth, like no more hope. They would send us to prison for 90 days observation. And then they send us back to this program, this old dungeon looking building. It's like the oldest building that was being used by the state of California as an institution. So it was just awesome looking, just being in there. But the staff in there had a policy with us of leniency. It was like this: as long as you don't kill each other, we'll let you do what you want, so to speak. Right. So they actually let us tattoo on each other, and they brought us pornography. They never searched our rooms, and so right around that time, this is in the 70s. Right around that time is when they invented the homemade tattoo machine in prison. And I remember we got the plans from Susanville prison on how to make a tattoo machine out of the motor out of a cassette player.
Oh, wow. So
we immediately started making these machines, and the staff would bring us ink, And so for the next 2.5 years or so, I just spent every day tattooing in there, and I got really good at it. So when I got out, I immediately set up shop in my apartment, and was tattooing all the homies, and tattooing with Chicanos was getting really, really popular. But at the very same time, this guy, Good Time Charlie, who was tattooing at the Pike in Long Beach, he saw a market in East LA, and he opened up a tattoo shop over there. He realized that what they wanted in East LA was a lot different from what was being done everywhere. The only style of tattooing that was available professionally was a traditional style. And I remember we used to hate it. We thought it was this real simple designs colored in, kind of like a cartoon,
Right.
And what we were doing in prison was trying to make our designs look real, using realism, like real thin lines and different shades of gray, for shading and depth, So Good Time Charlie opened up this tattoo shop, and he had this guy, Jack Rudy, Weddle, and who was a really talented artist, but he also grew up in, the Chicano neighborhood. And so he was familiar with the art and everything. And, people would come to my apartment and say, hey, man, there's a tattoo shop in East LA on Whittier Boulevard, man. And they're doing pinta style, pinta means prison. They're doing pinta style tattoos, and I see this work and I go, wow, that's really, really good, and I would send people back over there, hey, go show Weddle this, what I was doing. And then finally he sent word for me to go over there and visit him. So I went over there and met him, and we got along really good. I shared my artwork, what I was doing, and I brought people that I tattooed and stuff. Not long after that, Good Time Charlie had quit tattooing and sold the tattoo shop to Ed Hardy. And most people are familiar with Ed Hardy because of the brand, his Ed Hardy brand.
Right.
But Ed Hardy is like the father of modern tattooing. He introduced Japanese style. He saw what we were doing, and he introduced that to the tattoo world. He's like the Pope of tattoos, So
Yeah.
Anyways, Ed Hardy sent word to me that he wanted to hire me. So I went over there and I got a job at Good Time Charlie's with Jack Rudy, and together Jack Rudy and I and a few others, Bob Roberts, Ed Hardy, Mark Mahoney, we introduced a new style to the tattoo world that's come to be known as black and gray realism. So that's kind of my tattoo story.
Yeah. Well, now when you were at the youth authority and you said like you hated like the traditional style of tattooing, and as you're kind of creating this black and gray realism, was there any like I don't know, were you ever like resistant towards it? Were you ever like, oh man, like this, I don't know if this is ever gonna like catch on, or like this is so different than what everybody's doing, or were you doing it like as a result of that, like in order to like kind of shake things up, and like I guess like being in the youth authority, like you kind of like don't care about like the outside world, you know?
Yeah, well, like when I was in actually doing it in youth authority, I didn't give traditional tattooing a thought,
Mm-hmm.
It's basically what we were doing, that was our style, the cholo style, the gangster style. And when I got out, I was very surprised to see that a professional tattoo shop had opened up to attempt to do our style, because all the tattoo shops were just doing the same kind of work. Which I look back at it now, I appreciate traditional tattooing because it's very popular as well, But at the time, I didn't like it. I liked our style. But I think me and Jack Rudy, we realized, and Ed really helped us to realize that we were a part of something different, something really fresh, and something that was going to really take off. So we kind of knew that, Ed Hardy's objective, which became our objective as well, was to get the world to see that tattooing was a form of art. Because back then, people didn't like it overall, in general. People didn't like it. People would always say, well, that's not art. They would literally say that. And that seems obscure today, because I don't think anybody would say that today, that tattooing isn't a form of art, So I guess we accomplished our objective, but that was Ed Hardy's thing. He wanted the world to see that tattooing was a form of art, with his beautiful Japanese style tattooing and the black and gray realism. Those were two styles that really came on the scene to transform tattooing and begin to make it really popular,
Right. Well, now when you got out and when you can kind of like go in the same circles, or at least show off your work to the likes of, Ed Hardy, Jack Rudy, at Good Time Charlie's, was there like a mission then, like when you got out, like I'm going to like turn this into a business, or was it just kind of like what you knew and you're like, I'm just going to continue doing this? Like, did you have like a kind of a business mindset and like an overall goal of like where you wanted to end up, or was it just kind of more of the same thing?
It was kind of just letting it flow. Who did have the business mind was Ed Hardy, because he was an educated man. And we see now the things that he's accomplished with all his publications and everything. He really put it out there, when he started Hardy Marks Publications and stuff like that. And, when I saw what a great artist and what a great man he was, I put myself under his wing, and I was just, Ed, just teach me everything, So he was there to really promote us. We kind of let that business part of him take over, almost like he was my manager. I remember, because I always went by my gang name, El Coyote. And I remember him telling me, okay, you're not going to go by Coyote anymore, you're going to go by Freddy Negrete. And it's funny because when I was a kid, my homeboys would make fun of me saying Freddy Negrete, because it rhymes and stuff like that.
Right,
I hated that name. I'd be like, my name's Freddy Negrete, I'd say the Spanish version.
Right.
But I always say, okay, whatever you say, And I remember, I used to call black and gray realism joint style or pinta style. Mm-hmm. Jack Rudy called it fine line, and I remember Ed Hardy saying, no, okay, you know what? We're going to call it black and gray realism, And I was like, yeah, black and gray joint style. And he's no. Jack Rudy was like, yeah, fine line, black and gray. And he's like, no, black and gray realism. So he was really at the helm of all this, with his intelligence and his business mind, Yeah. And look, he's a millionaire today, so he did something right.
He knows something.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of black and gray realism, you mentioned that you did some tattooing before going in, and then I imagine that it's like a hard thing to master. It's not just like you're like, okay, like I got this idea to create like realistic stuff and like using fine line. So I imagine there is some amount of trial and error. And my question is like, who let you do that on them? You know what I mean? Like, cause you gotta like start somewhere. So was there ever like nervousness from you to tattoo on somebody, like trying to like push your own style? Or was there ever any nervousness from the person that was getting tattooed?
Not much because,
No.
because I progressed at like levels. So, starting off, doing the hand poke stuff. And I had older guys from prison when they got out, when I was like a teenager, that showed me how to sharpen the guitar strings and how to melt it into a toothbrush and make a little hand poking rig, And in my neighborhood, with my homeboys, I was always the best at it, at what I was doing. So I never had any problem with confidence or anybody else to look up, to say, oh man, I got to get my work to look like that,
Right, to compare it,
we were kind of like breaking ground, and I ended up doing really big tattoos, I saw one of my older homeboys that I tattooed on years ago, one of my hand poke things, and it was a big rose that I did on him, and I was like, oh my God, it looks like a cabbage, dude. Like, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
But at the time, it was the best in my neighborhood, so I never had a problem with that. And then the same thing with, when I was in Tamarack program in YA, we were all tattooing in there, but I happened to be the best at it. So, and I would create the patterns, the designs for other people to do, so, and I added some ingenuity into the machine, things that made it work better. And then, there's no loss of people to do the work on, they're like everybody's willing to get the tattoos. So I didn't really start feeling nervous maybe till later,
When later?
When I was tattooing professional, and now all of a sudden here's somebody paying good money and I got to do my best on this and things like that.
Yeah, their skin looks like more of a scary blank canvas than when they're not shelling out money.
There's a little bit more pressure there,
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, also, was it easier then when you got out and could kind of do it professionally? Like, did you have better tools to use, or were you kind of used to the prison style?
I was so eager to become a professional tattoo artist that I took right away to the professional machines. I was really comfortable with the machines. They work much better, of course, than our homemade rig. But it's what's funny is that prison style tattoo machine is basically a rotary motor, the professional tattoo machine is like the concept of a ringing bell. It's got the two magnets that make the thing go,
right.
It's electric and it doesn't have a motor, but it just kind of goes back and forth, whereas a rotary machine goes around. But now, with all this ingenuity in modern tattooing, the machine that's most popular and is used by most of these young tattoo artists is a rotary machine based off that prison design. It's amazing.
Yeah, I always compare that to NASA. Like, so much technology that we have today comes from back from in the space race when we were just pushing and pushing and using what we had to create what we could get, and so much technology comes out of that. And sometimes the best stuff comes from what we can kind of scrap up. You know what I mean? That's where the best ingenuity comes from.
Right. And not only the machine, did that concept come from prison, but also, the stencils that we use to put on people, that comes from the old mimeograph machines, the ditto paper, which, used to be used in, schools and everything when they didn't have copy machines. They'd make these mimeograph, it was called mimeograph copies. It was like a purple, ink. And now that's the the method that tattooers use to apply the stencils. So there's a new market for these machines, like people are making these old machines that used to be made for school. It's called a thermal fax, and it takes this ditto paper, and it sticks on skin. It's really hard to explain, I guess.
Right.
But most people that get tattooed, they know about the stencils. They see when the stencil goes on. But that also came from prison.
That's so cool. Well, can we talk about, you won the Tattoo Artist of the Year in 1980. Could you talk about that experience and kind of what that did for you?
Yeah, that was probably the highlight of my life, so, once I started tattooing, professional there, with Jack Rudy, him and I just focused in on getting better. Like every tattoo we try to make better, and we work together on ideas and machines. We stayed all night long, every night. I mean, I'd sleep till about 5, and then I'd be at the shop. Jack and I would be at the shop at 6, and we would tattoo straight. And then after, we would stay all night, either tattooing each other, creating new designs. We were really, really into it. So, and I felt like my art was advancing by leaps and bounds. But I remember when I first met Ed Hardy, because he lived in San Francisco. So I remember when he said, "Yeah, I'm going to come down to meet you," and this and that. And I had some Polaroids, pictures of work I had been doing, and he was like, "These are so good, man." And then he was like, "Here, this is the stuff I've been doing." And he had these, 35 millimeter pictures, beautifully colored.
Right.
It was like all these back pieces, and full body coverage, the Japanese style. I had never seen that before. And I was just like blown away by all the work that he was doing. I never imagined anybody using the whole body as a canvas for one design or one picture, So also the use of color and gray, because the Japanese style, they use a lot of gray. Like they'll have gray water and, a big, beautifully colored dragon going through it, So, and I like that mixture. So I worked on this big back piece where I was using the color like in a Japanese tattoo, and the black and gray mixed together. So I did this big Madonna. There's a picture of it in my book.
It's beautiful.
Like this big Madonna, but it's just in black and white in the book, but it's a full color tattoo, So the Madonna is like all black and gray and with all these color roses in the background. And I put a big realistic looking face and a skull. So, and this was, 1978, 1979. So it was a groundbreaking tattoo. So when we got to the tattoo convention, it was the 5th World Tattoo Convention. So that's how early things were. There was only one convention back then. And what you would do is you put 8x10 photographs on a wall of the picture, a picture of the work that you did. And then all the artists would judge it, and the winner would get Tattoo Artist of the Year. So my tattoo won by a landslide, because it was different than anybody had ever seen before. So it was really a breakthrough tattoo, for the industry. For me, I won Tattoo Artist of the Year. And it's funny, at that convention, because it was in Sacramento, when I was in Tamarack program, I was supposed to do 3 years in there, but I only did a couple because I kept telling the staff, "Hey, you guys should give me a time cut. Send me the board and give me a time cut. I'll get a job as a tattoo artist, And
right.
And one day they told me, "Hey, you're gonna go to board tomorrow, so get ready." And I was like, "What?" And they sent me to the board and they gave me a year time, cut off my time. So this is a little over a year later. So I was at the tattoo convention tattooing, and all of a sudden I heard somebody say Fernando, And I was like, "Hey, nobody calls me Fernando. Everybody calls me Freddy." And I looked up, and it was like 4 of the staff members from Tamarack program. That was the highlight there.
They came to
that convention. They go, "Dude, we knew you'd make it."
That's awesome.
Yeah, because the youth authority was not far from there. So I don't know if they knew I was there or they just happened to go because they were interested in tattoos because of Tamarack. But anyways, that was a good moment.
Yeah, especially because you lived up to what you said you'd do.
Yeah, I lived up to it. And not only that,
man.
I became at the top of my field, so those guys don't see much success with, the guys who are in Tamarack. Recently, after I did this documentary, one of the old staff members called me at the tattoo shop, and he goes, "Man, I saw you on TV, man, and I just had to find out where you were so I could talk to you. I don't know if you remember me. I'm one of the staff from Tamarack program, and you actually put a tattoo on me," because some of the staff let me tattoo them, and he's going, "I just wanted to say, man, that out of all the people in that program, you're probably the only one that ever really became successful." And he goes, "And when you were there at Tamarack, after you left, things changed a lot, but there was never, ever a time like that. And that was the most unique time in the history of that program, so that was something too."
That's awesome. Well, when you hear something like that, does that like add pressure to you? Like, do you feel like you kind of have like a mission now, or like kind of a pressure to like continue like impressing and continue like living your life like that?
Yeah, I don't know if it's pressure, but it's encouragement. Mm-hmm. It's very encouraging, and and I know I'm telling my story here, but I never really saw myself as someone really great or anything like that. People will come up to me and tell me, "Hey, thanks for all you did for tattooing for us." Like when I'm at a tattoo convention, and these younger artists will come up and pay respect and stuff like that. And I always feel like, man, I'm just a thug gangster, I learned this in prison, it's like, I never really had this high feeling of myself, but when things like that occur, it makes me feel good about what I've done with my life, Could have went very differently.
Right, absolutely. Well, I think a lot of people have that feeling, and I know, at least for me, like not this is no comparison, but like with the podcast, like you make goals for yourself. Like, I want to get so many listeners or whatever. And as you kind of like go along that journey, it never really feels like you're like that you've won, like that you've like reached the top of the mountain. There always seems to be like somewhere else you can go. And I think that's like important for people to hear, the fact that like, you, like you said, you always feel like I'm just a gangster, like you're always gonna have those feelings of like, I'm just like an ordinary person, but like you have to keep like pushing towards those goals. And kind of going along with that, like you mentioned like trying to get better with every tattoo. Do you still have that feeling? Like, you talked about looking back at the rose and it looking like a cabbage. Like, do you still have that experience where you feel like you're still progressing, or do you think you've kind of like reached like a pinnacle?
It's amazing what I'm going through now, because, I have my times, my difficult times, there was even a time for a minute there where I quit tattooing. Well, not a minute, it was actually kind of long. And I went to college and tried to do other things. And then I had my run in with drugs. But really around early 2000s, I had a terrible thing happen. My youngest son passed away, and I ended up really a terrible drug addict. And there was a time there where I didn't care about tattooing at all. I didn't care about anything. I was almost suicidal. I just, I would go to work. I'd go to the tattoo shop and do a few tattoos just to get the money. And I remember that I would just rush through them. This is a terrible thing because it's somebody's body, but I would just do enough, to make the tattoo look decent. I wasn't trying to get better. I wasn't focused on my work. I only cared about getting high, and this was a terrible time for me, and eventually when I nearly died and I, went into rehab, and I made a huge change in my life. And we could talk about a little bit about that after, but what happened was when I came out of the rehab and went back to work, those years that I wasted, things had changed, things got better. better equipment. I wasn't paying attention what was going on around the tattoo world. And now all of a sudden these new young, Chicano tattoo artists were taking this black and gray realism to new heights, and it was just amazing what they were doing. And so I came back with this new focus, and I realized that things had changed a lot, and that if I wanted to stay relevant in my field, I would have to learn all over again, and that was the commitment that I made, to be teachable. And I went to shows and I met all these young kids, and I looked at what they were doing, and I picked up on new technologies and new methods, and I was determined to bring myself up to that level, or the full level of my potential. All of a sudden I had this new focus, and I still have it today. And it's been over 10 years, because like the older guys, like when you do something a certain way, and it's the same thing with music or anything else, and you may be, a pioneer or an originator, but very seldom do those old guys pick up on what's new and do it. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, you get these habits and you just kind of live with them.
Yeah, this is the way I've always done it, and I'm always going to do it, So I had to shake that off. And it was almost like becoming a new artist, and do things the way they're being done now. And I think I've come a long way with that. I've earned the respect of my peers, my younger peers. Before people would come to me like, oh, you're Freddy Negrete. I want to get this little tattoo just so I could say I have a tattoo from Freddy Negrete. I didn't like that. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be like that. And now I have clientele that comes to me. They don't know who Freddy Negrete is, other than just a tattoo artist on Instagram who does nice work, Mm-hmm. And so I have people coming to me, not because I'm Freddy Negrete, but because they see my work and they think it's good and they want it, So right. I really went through what you were talking about, the challenge of it's almost like a new beginning for me, and it's exciting and I'm loving it, And yeah, I've been tattooing 40 some years now, so there was a lot of ups and downs, and there's times, no matter what you do in life, sometimes you get tired of it, and you just don't want to do it anymore. You're just sick of it, and I went through all that, but I'm not going through that now. And I don't see myself going through that ever again. I love my work. I appreciate this opportunity that I have. And so going to work for me is like a challenge and a journey, and I'm loving it.
Yeah. You mentioned like the idea of like needing to like kind of shake off old habits or like be willing to learn new things. I think a lot of people get stuck in something that's worked for many years, and I don't know if it's like not necessarily like a laziness, but like maybe like a fear of like kind of not abandoning that old style or that old thing that worked, but like kind of a fear to switch things up and like kind of go into the unknown. But it's so important to do that, because not only is it going to expand your horizons, so to speak, but it's also going to make it more fun. Like, even though it's a challenge, like that's where the fun of being a creative person is like to explore like new territory.
Yeah, exactly.
And now you mentioned like a huge change in your life. Is that what you attribute that kind of new kind of fortitude, like a new attitude that has kind of kept you going to like continue to like try to get better for the past 10 years?
Yes.
To that huge change?
Mm-hmm. When I went into the rehab, I went in there with an open mind, open heart, because in my heart, I was like, I'm never going to use again, because all it's done is brought destruction and misery in my life. So I'm never going to, use drugs again or alcohol. But now I just had to learn how to do that, because for an addict, it's a difficult task, And so I went into the rehab with an open heart, and it was a great program. It's called Beit Teshuva. It's a Jewish program. My mother's Jewish. And so it's a 3-pronged. They use Judaism, the 12-step programs, which were 12 steps were so helpful for me, and the psychotherapy. But all those things helped me to deal with the issues I needed to deal with in order to keep myself strong and to overcome my addiction. But one of the things that really helped, because the head therapist there was my therapist, and he was also a good friend of mine, was into Eastern style meditation, breathing exercises. And I meditated a lot in there. And that had a great, influence over my work, because when I learned to meditate and focus and breathe right, I was able to apply that to my art, so I've never been so focused on what I'm doing when it comes to my art. And I attribute that to the meditation classes and things that I took at the rehab. So I think that the psychotherapy and the 12 steps really helped me to overcome, my addiction, which you never really overcome it. You're always an addict. It's always a constant battle. Mm-hmm. But with the 12 steps, you have the tools, that you need to stay sober daily on a daily basis. And I think the meditation part of it helped me to refocus on becoming the best artist that I could become.
Well, Freddy, congratulations, because that's a big thing. And people can read in the book about kind of what led up to that experience. But congratulations to you for saving your life, man.
Thank you. Yeah. I couldn't be happier. Of course, there's so much, I have such a long story. We could be here all afternoon, but
that's why people need to get the book.
Yes. If they get the book, they're going to read some crazy stuff.
Yes, they will. Well, and speaking of that, can we just talk about the experience of the book itself, how you kind of came in contact with Steve Jones, and then how you guys decided to kind of go forward with this?
Yeah, well, people will always ask, especially in interviews, well, why did you write a book? Why did you think that you should write a book? I was feeling at the time like I had a story to tell. I had the whole Chicano, Cholo experience, East LA, lowrider experience, and people are interested in that, what happened, and people are interested in the style. So much so that in Milan and Japan, you have all these cholos, literally, that are very much into the lowrider cars and the custom cars and stuff like that. It's a global thing, so there's an interest in that. I was in the generation that, made that happen. Also the graffiti writing, graffiti's really big. So I was a big graffiti artist. And prison life, people are really interested in the prison life. So, there was that aspect. Then, of course, the tattoo story. But most of all, it's a story of redemption and new life. And those are the things that I felt, a good reason to write a book, that it would entertain people, and it could also have the potential to help somebody, and
to share some awesome art as well.
Yeah, there's good pictures in there too.
Yeah.
So, when I met Steve, Steve was, because he's from London, and he lives in Vienna in Austria, and but he was here working on a project because he's a playwright. So he was working on a project about this lady from London, and her family lived here. Her daughter and her granddaughter. And so her granddaughter was a friend of mine. We were in rehab together. And that night I was speaking at this meeting called CGA. It's Criminal Gangsters Anonymous. And she had told Steve, hey, you got to come with me to this meeting and hear this guy speak, So Steve attended the meeting and he heard my share. And afterwards we got together for coffee. And, when he told me he was a writer, I was like, what? I want to write a book. I really want to tell my story, And at the time he told me, well, I've never written anything like that. I'm a playwright and stuff, but maybe I can lead you in the right direction, So we exchanged numbers, So the next day he was driving up to San Francisco, and he said it just hit him like a ton of bricks. Like all of a sudden he just got this flash, what? I'm going to write this book for him, I'm going to write it. So he called me up and he goes, you know what? He didn't want to talk more about it or anything. He goes, you know what? I'm going to write your story. And so for the next 6 years, we worked on it. We went through a lot of ups and downs, every kind of obstacle you could face in this thing, in terms of finding an agent, getting a publisher willing to go out on the limb with it, So it was a difficult task, but, it was amazing to see it all come to fruition. And it's just been an incredible journey. I could write a book about writing a book.
You should. Well, no, like my favorite part of that is it's something I talk about on the show all the time, is like not being afraid to tell people what you want out of life, or tell people what your goals are or what your dreams are. Even just like people that you meet for the first time and they're like, I'm a writer, and they're like, I want to write a book. And then like you never know what the universe will give you, what God will give you, if you just kind of speak it out loud. Just say out loud, be like an open book, so to speak, to other people. And you never know like who's gonna like come in and help you.
Exactly. And the way everything came about, it does feel like some kind of divine intervention, and hopefully this book will reach people and touch people, and hopefully it can help people.
Absolutely. And we'll have that linked up at the show notes page where you can get it. The book's called Smile Now, Cry Later, Guns, Gangs, and Tattoos, My Life in Black and Gray. Definitely recommend getting it. If not for the story, for the art, it's a wonderful kind of thing to have on your bookshelf. Freddie, we like to end this show with what we call the final push. And this is where I ask you to kind of reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today with your story, and just give them any final words of advice that you might have to really push them to pursue their own creative passions. Yeah,
I encourage anyone that I've always done everything I've done with great obstacles, and it should be that way, Nothing comes easy. Everything requires hard work and determination. So don't let anybody tell you can't do what you're dreaming to do. And don't let any obstacle tell you to, encourage you to give up. Always fight, always work hard, and always push forward.
Perfect. Dude, Freddie, thank you so much for coming on the show today, for telling your story, and for giving us that push, man.
Thank you for having me.
And then you can find Freddie on Instagram. He is Freddy_Negrete. That's Negrete. And you can get the book on Amazon. And we'll have everything linked up at today's show notes page at yourcreativepush.com/Freddy Negrete. Freddie, thanks again.
Okay, thanks a lot, Youngman.
Oh, big thank you once again to Freddie for coming on the show. I hope that it inspired you to push past your own obstacles, the obstacles that stand in your way to whatever you want to achieve in life, whether it's creative or not. Freddie had a lot of ups in his career, but also a lot of downs as well, things that he had to push past. And I love his final push where he reminds you that they are supposed to be there. Those obstacles are supposed to be there. They will make you a stronger person once you do push past them, once you do find a way around them or over them or under them or whatever it takes to get past them. Some people are going to have bigger obstacles earlier in life or bigger obstacles later in life. They're going to come at times where it's not convenient for you as a creative person, but you have to be ready for them. You have to anticipate that they're going to be there, and you have to be ready to fight the battle once they do show up. Like the title of his book, Smile Now and Cry Later. Fight those adversities with the best attitude you can put forward. Count your blessings. Realize that it is a lucky thing to be a creative person on this earth. It is a lucky thing to be able to express yourself in the way that only you can. So remember, like Freddie said, nothing comes easy. Everything requires hard work and determination. And always fight, always work hard, and always push forward. Again, the book is Smile Now, Cry Later. You can find it anywhere books are sold, or you can find it on Freddie's website, FreddyNegrete.com, FreddyNegrete.com, or you can head to today's show notes page to find everything we talked about today with Freddie, as well as links to get the book at yourcreativepush.com/268. On our next episode, we have Shayla Maddox. Shayla is an artist who makes light reactive paintings. These are some of the coolest things I've ever seen, and I haven't seen them with my own eyes yet, which I think is the way that you're supposed to really see these. We talk at length about the fact that pictures don't do these paintings justice because they change depending on the time of day, the season, and even if the lights are on or off. With black lights, they are so cool. If you want to check out her art, you can head to shaylamaddox.com, or you can find her on Instagram, Twitter, or Patreon as Shayla Maddox, SHAYLAMADDOX. We also talk on the episode a lot about Patreon and how you can get so much closer to your audience if you are a part of that platform. But that is all I've got for you today, so hopefully you were inspired to go and get your work done. So go and get it done. We'll be here for you next time. If you need the push again, go and get some amazing work done. Don't let those obstacles stand in your way. Keep pushing, keep creating. I love you guys so much, and we will see you next time. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.